Okay, happy Halloween, everyone. Well, almost Halloween. Today, we are joined by Rosie. Rosie is much quieter than Churro, but she's very interested in the microphone right now, and she is sitting on my lap. I haven't been able to start the voiceover. She's pushing the microphone away from my face right now. Are you gonna bite it? Oh, you're gonna bite it. Okay. Anyways, she's been sitting on my lap. I took this picture just recently as I was trying to get into this video. Today, I'm going to be playing Pokemon Yellow with only Mimikyu. And Rosie almost completely messed up this intro because she would have made me forget to talk about my wife. But luckily, I caught it right before this video was going to go live and was able to add this section. Mimikyu is one of my wife's favorite Pokemon because she loves all things Halloween. She's actually the reason that I do this Halloween-themed month on my channel and try to release a video every day on Halloween week. So this video is dedicated to my loving and supportive wife. Thank you for encouraging my dreams and not complaining when I have to play solo challenges into the midnight hour. Okay, now let's get into Mimikyu. This is one of my favorite Pokemon that was introduced in Generation 7, and it has a really unique ability. For these backports, whenever I'm playing a Pokemon that has an ability that I feel is integral to the Pokemon's identity, I am going to be backporting the ability into Generation 1, but only in those cases. So another example of a Pokemon like that would be Slacking. It just doesn't feel like that species should exist without its ability. So today, Mimikyu will have Disguise in Generation 1. I'm going to go through how this ability works and how I've backported it into Generation 1, but first of all, we have some other things to cover. Let's start with base stats. Mimikyu has 55 HP, 90 attack, 80 defense, 96 speed, and 105 special. I had to make a choice here between giving it its special attack, which is 50, or its higher special defense from Generation 7, and I went with the higher special defense. This is because in Generation 7, Mimikyu is mostly a physical attacker, but in Generation 1, it's mostly going to be a special attacker, which I'll talk about more as we get through the video and the first playthrough. It has an 18.75% chance to crit and a medium fast growth rate. In terms of starting moves, we don't have the best set. Splash, Scratch, Lick, and Double Team. Of course, Double Team is banned in my solo challenges, so I won't be using it today, even though I'm starting with it. The reason I assigned it to Mimikyu is because in Generation 7, it would start with Double Team at level 5, and it would also have Splash, Scratch, and Astonish. I wanted to give it a damage-dealing ghost move at the beginning of the game, so my only option for Generation 1 was Lick. The only difference is the secondary effect. Another reason to backport Double Team is because I released these patches so that you can play them yourself at home. Maybe you don't have a rule against evasion-boosting moves, and in that case, you might want to make use of Double Team. So that's why it's here on Mimikyu's starting set. For level-up moves, I modeled what Mimikyu gets off of its Generation 7 set, which was its debut generation. This is always how I approach these backports. In Generation 7, Mimikyu gets Baby Doll Eyes, Shadow Sneak, Mimic, Feint Attack, Charm, Slash, Shadow Claw, Hone Claws, Play Rough, and Pain Split. Generation 1 Pokemon tend to never learn more than 7 moves by level up, so I truncated this set, removing the level 50 slot as well as the level 5, 10, and 14 slots. This left me with Mimic at level 19. Instead of Feint Attack at 23, I switched it out for Swift, which is roughly equivalent. After all, in Generation 1, Swift is physical, and that's basically super effective against most psychic types. Instead of Charm at level 28, I've given it Growl, and at 32, it can just get Slash. Now for Ghost, Steel, Dark, and Fairy type Pokemon in Generation 1, I do typically like to backport one move for them. This is more of a recent addition to these backports. It just feels like a Ghost type with only Lick or Nightshade. Doesn't feel that interesting to play in these games. After all, we already have examples of those Pokemon. So today I backported Shadow Claw for Mimikyu at level 37. Instead of Hone Claws, I've given it Sharpen, and then at level 46, it will learn Play Rough. For my backports in Generation 1, I have made the Fairy type special, so this is going to utilize Mimikyu's higher special when compared with its physical attack. I had 3 choices as to how I was going to assign the Fairy type's damage category. Number 1, physical, number 2, special, or number 3, based on the species that I was backporting. It would be easy enough for me to just switch it to physical for Mimikyu and then special for a different Fairy type. But that didn't really feel good since I do end up comparing all of these Pokemon in a tier list at the end of the video. So I wanted to take one of the consistent approaches, either option 1 or option 2. Option 1, being physical, didn't really make a lot of sense to me since the Dragon type is a special type in Generation 1, and essentially Sylveon that was introduced in Generation 6 is taking the place of the Dragon evolution, which I think we otherwise would have got. After all, every single other special type that was introduced in Generation 1 has an evolution paired with it. The only one this isn't true for is the dragon type, and even Churro is upset about that. For that reason, I felt like the special fairy type was the best fit for Generation 1. Okay, let's talk about the early game for ghost types. It is so easy because almost every enemy Pokemon only has normal type moves. There are a couple exceptions. Number 1, the rival on Route 22 has a Spearow and it does no Peck. Number 2, Brock's Onix can hit you with damage from Bide because it bypasses type effectiveness. And then number 3 is right after Brock, there's a Weedle with Poison Sting, but I resist that move and I have Disguise. It's probably not going to be a problem. But coming back to Brock, I think he could be an issue because his Onix is fairly fast. It has 23 speed. Since Mimikyu has a high base speed stat, I figured that training a little bit on the bug catchers in the forest to level it up so that it would outspeed Onix was the safest way to play this early game, at least in my first playthrough. I'm going to talk about an alternative to this in the second playthrough, which some of you also might have spotted by now if you really know Generation 1 mechanics. For now, I finish off the forest, I'm level 9 with 25 speed, and I head into Brock's gym to face the first gym leader. The only move on his team that can deal damage to me is Bide, so I just need to watch out for it. If I misplay and accidentally attack into the Onix, I'm sure it won't deal enough damage to knock me out, since I can use Splash to buy time. It's actually useful in this case because I couldn't use Double Team to buy time because that is technically against my rules. Even though it wouldn't have an effect on the battle, well, it wouldn't have a material effect on the battle, it actually would slightly impact the result because when Onix chooses Bind, it still plays the animation for the move while it doesn't deal damage to ghost types. This is a really weird quirk from Generation 1, so if I increased my evasion using Double Team, then Onix would be less likely to trap me with Bind and waste time, which does impact Mimikyu's results at the end of the playthrough. I just have to be a little bit careful never to click on Double Team. As long as I'm using Splash, this battle is a foregone conclusion. With Brock defeated, I head to the Pewter City Mart. I'm going to buy myself healing items here, specifically items that can cure status conditions. And this is because of how Disguise works. The easiest analogy for it is Substitute, but it actually works quite differently. On the basic level, it prevents damage from the first damage dealing move that Mimikyu is hit by during battle. This breaks Mimikyu's Disguise, and then all subsequent damage dealing moves will hit Mimikyu normally. Well, not normally, because normal moves can't hit ghost types, you get what I mean. This is where the comparison with Substitute ends, because if Mimikyu is confused, it's gonna break its own Disguise. In Generation 1, if a Pokemon behind a substitute is confused, it will not break its own substitute. It will actually erroneously assign the damage to the enemy's substitute, and in most cases the enemy does not have a substitute, so nothing happens. Another way that Disguise isn't quite as good as Substitute in Generation 1 is because it's not going to block status condition moves, and it's also not going to block secondary effects from moves that deal damage to Mimikyu. So this Weedle here with Poison Sting can break my Disguise and also poison me on the same turn. I still think ghost types should be immune to the poison status. It doesn't make a lot of sense that Mimikyu, a ghost, could get poisoned in this battle, at least from a lore perspective. That's just me. Luckily, I don't get poisoned here, and the Weedle's easy to finish off. Inside Mount Moon, we have the TM for Water Gun and the TM for Mega Punch, but Mimikyu can't learn these moves. But it does get some other good TMs. Swords Dance, most notably, I think. It doesn't learn Body Slam, but it gets Mega Drain, Thunderbolt, Thunder, Psychic, and Swift. For now, my moveset's going to remain unchanged during Mount Moon. The only choice I have to make here is, am I going to grind against additional trainers? And I decided not to, since the ghost type is going to carry me through the next section of the game. After all, the rival on Nugget Bridge is really bad against ghost types. The only move he can hit me with is Peck. Well, that's not entirely true. He can also hit me with Sand Attack, which is very annoying because the Sandshrew lowers Mimikyu's accuracy by 5 stages before I knock it out, which is just terrible. I now have a 28% chance to hit with Scratch, and I have to use this move in order to knock out the following Rattata and Eevee due to type effectiveness. I guess I could get down to Struggle, but that's going to take forever because I have both Splash and Double Team, and that would also violate my rules because then I would have to use Double Team. For that reason alone, I need to get rid of this move as soon as I can. It probably made sense to teach Bide in its place once I defeated Brock, just so so I couldn't get into this scenario against the rival. You might think this would be helpful because Bide bypasses accuracy checks, but it doesn't matter because the rival is never going to deal damage to Mimikyu. Even with my accuracy lowered, I eventually pull through with a win, but I have to go back to the center and heal after this battle just to restore my PP before Nugget Bridge. After all, this location has a very high density of mandatory trainers, and I need to ensure that I can go the distance. Fighting the Rocket, I level up to 19, and here I can learn Mimic. Time to get rid of double team so that I can't use it in battle. It's very unique for a Pokemon to have access to this move early into the run, because most Pokemon get access to it once you finish Sylph, in the mid-game. Really, the first major trainer that you can fight with Mimic is typically Koga, and stealing either Psychic or Sleep Powder from him is typically the best play. And that's the case for most of the trainers after Koga. There's a mapped out move that makes sense for Mimic to steal. But in the early game, that isn't really the case, so I'm going to make some new discoveries here. For example, against the Elixir Hiker, I can actually mimic Karate Chop from the Machop. Due to my high base speed, Karate Chop is always going to crit. Keep that in mind for later. This is really great because then I can bypass stat changes that the Geodude sets up with Defense Curl, knocking it out a little bit faster than I otherwise would have using Lick and Scratch. By the time I reached the Oddish at the end of the route, I was a little bit worried about my PP situation, because Lick is not going to be able to knock out her Pidgey. I can use it to finish off the Oddish though, and then take care of the Pidgey using Scratch. At this point, I have enough uses of the normal type move to make it through, so this didn't end up being an issue. After saving Bill, I had to contemplate what my next step in the playthrough was going to be. I could go south to the SS Anne, but there isn't really a moveset upgrade that I'm going to get by doing this. Normally, this is a great strategy for Pokemon that are weak to Misty, and they also get Body Slam. Then you can come back and fight Misty with the more powerful normal type move. But Mimikyu can't learn it. I guess I could learn Rest, which would be okay. I could have also picked up Thunder Wave earlier in the playthrough and then used this status condition move against her Starmie, which, by the way, should be weak to ghost type moves, but because it's Generation 1, it is instead immune to them. So the only attack I can hit her Pokemon with right now is either Scratch or a mimicked water type move, but I don't think that makes sense, considering that with Brock's badge boost, my physical attack is 1 point higher than my special attack at this point in the run. Now, Scratch might get the job done against Misty, but I think there's a better option. Instead, I can fight the Rocket outside of Cerulean City right now. Defeating him is going to give me a little bit of experience and level Mimikyu up to 21. By the way, this is another fight where it makes sense to steal Karate Chop from the Machop and then use it to knock out the Drowsy more quickly, hopefully avoiding Hypnosis, which can otherwise waste a lot of time. My goal now is to get to level 22. I can fight one optional trainer inside of Misty's gym, this Swimmer, who gives decent experience yields. Then I can fight the junior trainer, getting Mimikyu to level 22. This way I can use one rare candy to level Mimikyu up to 23 and learn Swift in the place of Splash. This increased base power over Scratch should be what I need to take out Misty. Staryu's first, I'm faster than both of her Pokemon, and Swift can two-shot her lead. My disguise is broken during this process, which is a little bit unfortunate. It would have been more ideal if Misty had gone for X-Defend on turn 1, because then maybe I could have had my disguise in place for the Starmie, provided Swift had enough damage to still knock out the Staryu, and I think it would have. But against Starmie, I'm doing decent damage, roughly 1/4. Unfortunately, she uses her X-Defend here, cutting my damage. Then Starmie goes for Water Gun, but it's not doing that much because Mimikyu has high special. This is another reason that for me it made sense to assign Mimikyu its higher special defense as its special stat in Generation 1. In cases like this where I don't have any special moves, then my special stat is still acting defensively, making Mimikyu a special wall, which is how it was designed. Because of this, I'm able to overcome the Starmie and move on with the run. Okay, SS Anne, we got some choices here. Obviously, Body Slam isn't one of them, but I could pick up the TM for Rest. That said, we're a Swords Dance user. We also get access to Sharpen for badge boosts. I don't think we're going to need Rest, so I'm going to skip it to save some time. I know, I'm skipping Rest in a first playthrough. A lot of things have changed over the years. After all, I've been doing these solo challenges for over half a decade now. During that time, I think I've learned a lot. The only thing that I'm going to do on the SS Anne is fight the Gentleman and pick up the rare candy before taking on the rival. This is another really easy battle for ghost types. Once again, the only move he can hit me with for damage is the Spearo's Peck. It breaks my disguise right away, but this doesn't matter because after that, the rest of his team is trivial. Even getting hit by Sand Attack now doesn't matter because I just bypass accuracy checks with Swift. The only thing I wanted to ensure was that I would have enough uses of the move left over so that I could take on Surge right away. I could have spent an Ether here before fighting him if if I really wanted to, but with 5 uses of Swift, I think I'll be fine. The Electric-type specialist, the man, the myth, the legend, Surge, the trainer who only has one Pokemon. It knows Thunderbolt, Mega Punch, Mega Kick, and Growl. 2 moves that are useless against ghost types, 1 move that is going to be annoying, and then Thunderbolt, the move that will deal direct damage, is going to first have to break my disguise. Plus, I have high special, so I'm going to take very little damage even if he does attack me. I think there are 2 ways that Surge could possibly win here. Number 1, paralyzing with Thunderbolt while it breaks my disguise, and then the player getting absolutely terrible luck due to the status condition. And number 2 is maybe Surge could crit me over and over again with Thunderbolt. It's probably going to 2-shot in that case, and Mimikyu might have to worry about that because as you can see, Swift isn't doing much damage. But Surge is terrible. He has no idea what he should be doing because in yellow he doesn't have good AI. As a result, he never uses Thunderbolt and my disguise isn't even broken. Defeating him gives me access to the Thunderbolt TM. It seems obvious that I should be teaching this to Mimikyu right away since some of its moves right now are pretty underwhelming, like Scratch. That said, in the past in Pokemon Yellow, I have found there to be some advantages to holding off on teaching Thunderbolt until later into the game. With some Pokemon, it ends up being the case that you teach Thunderbolt and then want to unlearn it for flexibility with your moveset in the mid-game. Then you won't have access to the powerful Electric-type move once you get to Lorelei during the Elite Four. This is definitely a consideration to make with Mimikyu since it does learn Swords Dance, and it seems initially to be the case that you would want to be using that powerful setup move in the late game. However, it's worth mentioning here that Shadow Claw's secondary effect is a high critical hit rate. Whenever you crit in Generation 1, it bypasses all stat changes, even the regular badge boosts, as well as any setup that you've done on your Pokemon or any setup that the enemy has done. Because of the relationship with crit rate and base speed, Mimikyu is always going to crit with these moves, just like with Karate Chop that we used earlier in the playthrough. This means setting up Swords Dance is not going to combo with Slash or Shadow Claw. As a result, we need to look for a different physical move to use in combination with Swords Dance. And that's where things get really unfortunate. We already have Swift, which I guess could be an option. We do learn Swift through TM, so I could relearn it later into the playthrough. Other than that, really the only options are Takedown and Double Edge, because Hyper Beam is walled off by Game Corner coins and it takes way too long to buy it. It would be faster for me to just slam my way through the late game with Thunderbolt and Psychic, over leveling throughout the mid game, rather than purchasing Hyper Beam and then pairing it with Swords Dance and getting through the game at a lower level. You'll also know that I don't like playing with recoil moves, and recently I have been making more use of Double Edge. But when it's my only option to pair with Swords Dance, I don't think that I'm going to go for that strategy today. Instead, I'm going to be leaning into special damage with Mimikyu. Okay, let's talk about the Rock Tunnel Gauntlet. First up, the Wrapping Lass. There is a really weird combo here. Remember that Wrap or Bind, moves like this that trap Pokemon for multiple turns, still play their animations even if they don't have an effect on the Pokemon they're used against. So this could waste time for Mimikyu if I get paralyzed by the Oddish, and this is a possibility since I can't one-shot either of the bulkier grass types. Another scary prospect here is if I couldn't one-shot the Bellsprout, then the Oddish could set up Poison Powder, and the Bellsprout could play the Wrap animation, which does increment the turn counter, causing Poison Powder to deal multiple turns of damage to Mimikyu. This is more of an issue in theory, because in reality I am one-shotting the Bellsprouts, so they aren't an issue. Inside of Rock Tunnel, let's talk about the Self-Destructing Hiker. I always love fighting this guy when I'm a Ghost type. Self-Destruct is a normal type move. As a result, when he uses it, it just speeds up my progress in the battle. He can damage Mimikyu with a Rock Throw, but instead his Pokemon have no idea what to do, and 2 of them self-destruct and then I knock out the Graveler using Lick. In Celadon City, I'm going to skip the Rocket Hideout. Since I'm not planning to use Double Edge, it doesn't make sense to go to this location and pick up the additional rare candy. Although then I make a bad choice because I buy myself some protein. I'm really not sure why I did this. It was sort of a thoughtless choice, and as soon as I completed my inputs, I was like, why did I do that? I should have been purchasing calcium here. Because once I get access to Fly, I can head to Saffron City and pick up the TM for Psychic, which is an outstanding move, especially for doing additional training throughout the mid-game. The rival, once again in Pokemon Tower is completely useless. All of his Pokemon deal normal type damage during this fight. There are 2 exceptions to this. The Fearow could potentially reflect damage back with Mirror Move, but I one-shot with Thunderbolt, so that's not a problem. The following Magnemite could attack with Sonic Boom since it bypasses type effectiveness in Generation 1, but no, that's not a problem. I just knock it out in one hit as well. I think the crit with Psychic there did matter. Other than that, it probably would have survived. After all, the Magnemite line has high special in Generation 1. Shelder could confuse Mimikyu, but it's not going to be able to attack because I have Thunderbolt, leading to the Sandshrew, and from there things are free because Sand Attack doesn't matter, I have Swift. All of the Chandler's Ghastly are outsped by Mimikyu, and Psychic is super effective. Plus, I can use Lick here to conserve Psychic PP if I want to avoid heals in the mid-game. On Cycling Road, I continue my training, fighting the Wheezing guy as well as the Biker boss. These Pokemon are all one-shots because of Psychic. In the Safari Zone, I pick up the one optional Carbos. In a lot of playthroughs with Pokemon that have decent or high speed stats, you can just skip this, but it's going to be important for Mimikyu today. I'll talk about why in a little bit. After completing this area, I dig back to Celadon City, and I figured I would just go and fight Erica now since Psychic is good against her team members. I was so confident here that I didn't even save going into the fight. My recent training has leveled Mimikyu up to 34, and I now have access to Slash, which will always critical hit. Because of this increased damage, I can use it on the Tangela and 2-shot Erica's lead. Next is Weepinbell. Psychic is super effective, but it just barely doesn't do enough damage. Weepinbell strikes back with Stun Spore, paralyzing Mimikyu, and then it starts using Razor Leaf, which gets a critical hit. That isn't guaranteed, by the way. Luckily, I am able to knock out the Weepinbell on the next turn, but then luck turns against me. Gloom goes for Petal Dance, doing a lot of damage because of its own critical hit. Then Mimikyu is fully paralyzed, Gloom continues thrashing around, bringing me to low HP, Psychic is unable to secure the one hit, and Gloom continues thrashing, knocking Mimikyu out. Erica is my first fault, and I had to blackout here because I didn't save in front of her, which wastes more time as my HM users have to faint. Instead of being scared of Erica, I just went right back to her and I didn't save once again. I was still confident. I know that I can pull this off. Anyways, the Weepinbell this time around uses Sleep Powder, putting Mimikyu to sleep. Luckily, Razor Leaf misses, then it hits, getting a crit, but Mimikyu wakes up and it's able to finish off her second Pokemon. Without Paralysis, the Gloom isn't as effective, plus I get a critical hit with Psychic. For my follow-up playthrough, I really don't want to respect Erica, but I might be forced to. Moving on with this run, I go to Sylph next. I do Machoke Candy, fight the Arbok trainer, and pick up the card key, but I'm not going to grab Swords Dance. Sharpen is better for badge boosting anyway, and I'm going to be running special moves in the late game. Prior to the rival, I decided to use 4 rare candies. After the first one, I teach Shadow Claw in the place of Swift, I finish off my leveling, and then take on Rival 5. I can 2-shot the Sandslash using Psychic, it just tries Slash and then faints. Luckily no Poison Sting or Sand Attack. Thunderbolt 1-shots Cloyster, then Slash 2-hits the Magneton. I do take a Thundershock here and I could have been paralyzed, but luckily I avoid it. Slash 1-hits the Kadabra, and then Mimikyu levels up to 41. This is where it can learn Sharpen. I thought for a good amount of time here about if I wanted to teach this move, and in the end I decided that I did want it since badge boosts can be very good in this game. But letting go of one of my current moves is a little bit painful. In the end, I decided that Shadow Claw probably made the most sense to drop since it's a ghost move and it can't do damage to normal types. Finally, the rival sends in Flareon, I use Slash, and I'm able to 2-shot. With Sylph completed, I could fight Sabrina now, but I don't think that that's the best play. Instead, since I have Psychic, and my speed is also higher than Koga's Venomoth, I think taking him on next makes the most sense. The question is, can I one-shot all 3 of the Venonats? And the answer is yes for the first one, yes for the second one, and yes for the third. Leading to Venomoth, it can't really do much damage to Mimikyu, plus my disguise is intact, and I get a critical hit with Psychic one-shotting his ace. I choose to go to Cinnabar Island next, fighting Psych along the way for good experience. This is where it's important to check in with Mimikyu's speed stat. After Koga and his badge boost, I now have 127, which is just a little bit too low to move first against Sabrina's Alakazam. This is why picking up Carbos in the overworld has been important. I have 2 of them in my inventory currently, and using both of them brings Mimikyu's speed stat up to 130, still 4 points shy of moving first against the Alakazam. I could fight Blaine now and get a special boost, which will help against Sabrina, but overall I'm more scared of Blaine Blaine than I am of Sabrina. Blaine causes problems for all of the Pokemon you don't expect to have problems against him, and when Flamethrower and Fire Blast have neutral damage against my Ghost Fairy type, I think that I want to hold off on fighting him. So even though I'm not going to be faster than Sabrina's ace, I return to Saffron City to take her on. Before that though, I pick up the TM for Mimic. It might be useful in the late game, and then inside her gym, I fight one trainer. This gives me enough experience to level up to 45 before taking on Sabrina. Mimikyu is faster than both Abra and Kadabra, plus I have Slash for physical damage, and I one-shot both of them. Slash is also really good against Alakazam, which can set up Reflect, and Sabrina also has an X Defend. She doesn't choose to use it, instead opting for Psywave, breaking Mimikyu's disguise. Slash does more than half, Alakazam misses Psywave, and then I knock out her ace. This is why I wasn't that scared of Sabrina. It's nice when you can move first against her ace, but it definitely isn't required in Pokemon Yellow. Time to head back to Cinnabar Island and face Blaine. I outspeed all three of his Pokemon, Slash crits, so I can't set up with Sharpen, leaving me with really only three options: spam Slash, spam Thunderbolt, or spam Psychic. Damage ranges here are a little bit counterintuitive, but they're all fairly equivalent. Slash does between 27 and 33% damage to Ninetales, Thunderbolt does between 27 and 33% to Ninetales, Psychic does 26 to 31% against Ninetales. So Psychic seems like the worst option, but I actually think that it has an advantage that the other two moves do not have, and that's that it can lower Special, meaning that Mimikyu will take less damage whenever Ninetales or Arcanine go for Fire-type moves. The Rapidash I'm not worried about because it has only Fire Spin and that move's pretty bad. There's another reason that Slash for this fight doesn't make a ton of sense is because as soon as I defeat the Ninetales, I level up to 46, and this is where Mimikyu can learn Play Rough. If I want to have this move, I have to either drop Sharpen or Slash right now because keeping Psychic and Thunderbolt just makes sense for the late game. Since Sharpen and Slash pair very poorly together, but Sharpen pairs well with special moves since it can badge boost, this is definitely the time to drop Slash. I'm able to take care of Rapidash without taking damage, then Arcanine comes in. I use Thunderbolt here. I don't think I should be. I go back to Psychic. Luckily, the Arcanine just spams Takedown, then uses Reflect, and I knock it out with Thunderbolt. Blaine definitely dropped the ball here. He could have been scary, but he wasn't this time around. There's only one more gym leader left. I fight minimum battles inside of his gym, and then I take on Giovanni. Mimikyu is faster than all of his Pokemon, even the Dugtrio and Persian. I can use Psychic to knock out his first Pokemon in 2 hits, which does leave me exposed to Dig, Sand Attack, or Earthquake. Fissure won't work since I'm faster. Luckily, Giovanni is sponsored by Guard Spec, so he doesn't attack. Persian's next, it only has normal moves, this one's free. Nidoqueen follows, Psychic is super effective, but I can't one-shot. It uses Thunder, breaking my disguise, and then I take it down. Nidoking follows, it goes for Earthquake, scoring a critical hit, doing massive damage, but Mimikyu hangs on with 5 hit points and I knock out his penultimate Pokemon. Here's the thing though, I have to take care of the Rhydon and there is no way that I'm gonna one-shot. Actually, it doesn't even look like I'm going to 2-shot. Although I did drop its special, so this is going to be a 2-shot now. Rhydon just needs to not attack. Giovanni could use a Guard Spec here, but in the moment when it really matters, he doesn't. Instead, Rhydon goes for Earthquake and Mimikyu takes its first reset. I'm halfway towards level 48 over a damage rounding threshold, so I fought 2 trainers inside of the gym to level up before coming back to Giovanni. I did consider using rare candies, but in the end I decided against it. I got a little bit risky here, setting up Sharpen 2 times against the Dugtrio. I think I should have knocked it out and then tried to set up on the Persian. There's not really a downside there. I had figured that out by the time I finished the Dugtrio, and I continue my setup against the Persian, badge boosting my special stats so that Psychic will have better damage against both of the Nidos. I assume that I'm going to one-shot them now since I got 6 badge boosts, and I am able to. However, the problem is that I level up after the Nidoking, losing my badge boosts, so Psychic's damage is going to revert. However, Mimikyu gets a critical hit. I still have my disguise in place, so Rhydon's Earthquake is ineffective this time around, and therefore Giovanni can't win. Rival 6 leads with Sandslash. I 2-shot with Psychic, move on to Execute, and I 1-shot with Play Rough. Cloyster goes down to Thunderbolt, and this fight is looking really easy. However, then Magneton comes out, and it looks looks like I'm gonna 3-hit using Psychic. Well, I did get a special drop, so it's gonna be a 2-hit now. Unless it hits me with Thunder Wave and then messes everything up because of the status condition. It attacks again with Thunderbolt, breaking my disguise before I take care of it with a follow-up Psychic. But I still have full health for the remainder of the battle. I can use Play Rough or Thunderbolt for neutral damage on the Kadabra. Thunderbolt's gonna do a little bit more, so I choose this. I get a critical hit, doing more than half. But Kadabra is also doing a lot with Psybeam now because I previously had my special lowered by its Psychic. And my next attack doesn't do enough to finish it. As a result, it hits one more Psybeam, crits, and Mimikyu faints. So I was really hoping that Magneton would just attack with Thunderbolt, but once again it uses Thunder Wave, ruining my chances for the next fight. I did make it by the Kadabra this time, but then Flareon uses Flamethrower, and the second one gets a critical hit. On my third fight, I get paralyzed once again by the Magneton. I'm actually taking a different strategy here, setting up with Sharpen instead. I'm trying to badge boost myself, take less damage, and do more damage to his Pokemon. It doesn't really work out. I get confused by the Kadabra and Mimikyu knocks itself out. I have 4 rare candies left over, and I wasn't sure that this was the best moment to use them. I'm gonna try one right now just to go over the damage rounding threshold at level 50 before trying the rival again. I'm also gonna play this with a completely different strategy now that I'm far away from leveling up in the middle of the battle. I can set up Sharpen on the Sandslash when its only move it can attack me with is Poison Sting. This allows me to get all the way to +6. I do have a status condition, but in Generation 1 this doesn't inflict damage if I knock the enemy Pokemon out in one hit. And I'm obviously doing that on all the Pokemon until the Magneton. The question here is, do my badge boosts allow me to one-shot? And the answer is no. But because of the poison from Poison Sting, I'm not going to get paralyzed, which I think is an advantage for Mimikyu. I still take some damage from Magneton's Thunder Shock, and then I move on to Kadabra. I'm not going to be able to one-hit here, so it will also do damage, unless it just chooses Reflect. Okay, this is going about as well as it could, but I lose badge boosts before the Flareon. It goes for Fire Spin, which compounds poison damage every turn. Luckily for me, it doesn't last long enough, and because of that, Mimikyu pulls through on red health. This is definitely the most difficult battle in the entire playthrough, at least up until this point. That's a little bit surprising, and a little bit ironic since the rival was so easy earlier on into the game. Victory Road time. In here, I pick up the rare candy. This one doesn't cost that much time, roughly 7 to 9 seconds. In most playthroughs, it's pretty good to pick up, unless you absolutely don't need more levels in order to take care of the Elite Four and the champion. To ensure that I level up one more time before taking on the Elite Four, I fight one trainer, the guy I call Cool Water. He has 3 water-type Pokemon, and Thunderbolt can one-shot all of them, giving me an easy level 52. Now, Mimikyu is ready for the Elite Four. Against Lorelei, turn 1 I'm going to attack, then if she goes for rest, I'm going to set up Sharpen. The Dugong can potentially mess me up here with a speed drop from Bubble Beam, but Aurora Beam lowering my attack is actually an advantage, because then I can set up with Sharpen and the original attack debuff actually badge boosted my special, which is my attacking stat for this battle. I could have set up more until the Dugong woke up, but I just went for it with Thunderbolt at +1 attack, and Thunderbolt gets the one-shot on Dugong. If the Dugong went down to 1 hit, then the Cloyster will as well, and so does the following Slowbro. But Jinx has to be 2-hit, giving it a chance to use Ice Punch. Luckily, no freeze. Lapras is last. I can't 1-hit, but it's only going to use Confuse Ray due to type effectiveness. Due to this, I'm able to finish it off, and then cue silly music, because this guy is so bad. He actually can't do anything to Mimikyu. The only Pokemon that is able to attack is Machamp, and its moveset is Leer, Karate Chop, Strength, and Submission. It has no moves that hit Ghost types, so he's not even able to break Mimikyu's disguise. Agatha is potentially a little bit more difficult. In this case, Gengar right away goes for Confuse Ray. This is one reason that running Swords Dance is not always a good idea, since it increases Confusion's damage, and then it would destabilize this fight. Plus, I don't need badge boosts here in order to move first against all of her Pokemon. While I'm not one-shotting, everything is a 2-hit, and that exposes me to some gambles, like her Pokemon potentially using Hypnosis followed by Dream Eater, but it doesn't happen. I just sweep with Psychic. It ends up being a really straightforward battle. Lance Thunderbolt for Gyarados, Play Rough for both Dragonairs, 10% downside here if I miss, then I can Thunderbolt the Aerodactyl. It does break my disguise using Fly, but then I one-shot with a critical hit. After that, Dragonite comes in, and unfortunately Play Rough doesn't do quite enough damage to one hit. It strikes back with Fire Blast, which doesn't do nearly enough, and then I take care of Lance's ace. This was another simple battle. Mimikyu stacks up very well against the Elite Four, but what about the champion? He is typically the best trainer in Pokemon Yellow. My remaining rare candies take Mimikyu to level 60. I hope that this is enough. Sandslash is first. I'm going to be using Psychic to knock it out, which is a 2-hit, and I have my disguise broken by Earthquake before I take it down. Alakazam is next, and I don't have great moves here. Thunderbolt is technically best, and I get Paralysis right away. Alakazam can't attack. I take it to low health. It hits with Psybeam, but gets a crit, bringing Mimikyu under half before I finish it. That's not ideal. Executor is next. I get a critical hit with Play Rough. By the way, the Executor has no idea what it should be doing here against Ghost types. Sometimes it'll use normal type moves, other times it's going to go for Hypnosis or Leech Seed. It's just randomizing. I get lucky, finish it, move on to Magneton, but with Play Rough, I'm going to have to 2-hit, exposing me to either Thunder Wave or Thunderbolt. In this case, Thunderbolt is better because Thunder Wave would allow the Magneton to move first and attack again with Thunderbolt since I can't one-shot. I get the luckier of the two options, leaving Mimikyu on 7 hit points for the following Cloyster, but I have Thunderbolt. Thing is, at level 60, I don't have the damage range I need to one-shot. So Cloyster survives on red health, uses Aurora Beam, and Mimikyu goes down. I tried again with the exact same strategy, and I make it to the Executor with less health, but maybe here I can change something. If the Executor is fundamentally incompetent against Mimikyu, I can squeeze in some Sharpens, badge boosting myself before the other Pokemon. This will at least ensure that I one-shot the Cloyster. The problem is, then the Executor has time to go for Hypnosis, which it hits, as well as Leech Seed, so that it's draining my health every turn, and this makes playing a longer fight more difficult. By the time I finish it, I'm on red health, and I still can't one-shot the Magneton, so it gets me with Thunderbolt. Maybe I should set up against the Sandslash? If I do this, it could crit me with Earthquake, but Mimikyu is shrugging off the non-crits decently well. I can get to +4 attack, and then it crits me with Earthquake. Great. I tried setting up on the Executor one more time, but it didn't work once again. This is a moment where I'm wishing that I picked up Rest, because I could just heal against Executor set up fully and the rest of the battle would be so easy. But there is another option for Mimikyu, and I feel like it's very fitting. I can teach Mimic in the place of Psychic. Then against Sandslash, when it's breaking my disguise, I can steal Earthquake and use Play Rough, which deals special damage to knock out his lead in 2 hits. I was hoping that the physical damage from Earthquake would give me a one-shot on the Alakazam, but it isn't quite enough. While I do take damage here and go to orange health, the Executor still is pretty bad, so I can risk it here, squeeze in some Sharpens, and then knock it out with Play Rough. Because of my single attack boost, I can one-shot the Magneton using Earthquake, and Thunderbolt with the badge boost can one-shot the Cloyster. Also, Flareon has really high special but low defense. Because of this, Earthquake is the better option against it, so I can one-shot his ace, and Mimikyu clocks in with a final time of 50 minutes and 47 seconds. It had 8 resets, 1 blackout, finished the game at level 61 with a game time of 3 hours and 1 minute. This was a good playthrough. I don't want to spend any time lingering on it and doing summarization. I want to get right into the follow-up playthrough because I had so much fun working out this route for Mimikyu. It is a really enjoyable Pokemon to play Yellow with, so I would highly recommend doing this solo challenge yourself. Go to the Discord link in the description and grab yourself the patch. Plus, I have released an updated copy of my overlay so that you can play it with all of the visuals yourself. In the early game, there is one choice that I have to make with Mimikyu. Do I want to outspeed Brock's Onix? There is a strategy where I can just fight him on minimum battles, because if I use Lick and paralyze the Onix, it cuts its speed, and then even when he uses a full heal, it will not have its speed stat restored, ensuring that Mimikyu always moves first against his ace and is never at risk of bide. The other strategy is to fight one trainer in the early game, which allows Mimikyu to be level 9 by the time it fights Brock, and this means it levels up after the Geodude and outspeeds the Onix. This is the strategy that I went for today. There are 2 options for trainers that I could could fight in the early game. This bug catcher, who is bug catcher number 15, he's an exclusive to yellow version, or the junior trainer inside of Brock's gym. I compared the number of turns that it takes to finish off both of their Pokemon. The bug catcher is between 12 and 13 turns, with the downside that he could choose to use Harden with his Metapod, extending the battle beyond that. The junior trainer, on the other hand, is between 10 and 14 turns, with no downside for a move like Sand Attack, which he doesn't have in yellow, but he does in red and blue, and he also doesn't have any defense boosting moves. If this was the only factor between the two trainers, I think that fighting the bug catcher would make more sense. There's a little bit more upside there, since if Mimikyu crits, it will also bypass the stat changes from Harden. That said, there is one other factor here, which is the amount of experience both of them give. While it doesn't change things for Brock, it does change things for Misty. If I fight the junior trainer, then I have enough experience to go basically minimum battles from Brock all the way until Misty's gym, where I fight the one optional swimmer. If I do that, then I get to level 22 after defeating the junior trainer, and I can use one candy to get Swift before fighting the water type specialist. If I instead fought the bug catcher here, I would then have to add in one more additional battle in order to get the level up prior to Misty. This is also the reason I opted to go for the outspeed strategy on Brock rather than the paralysis strategy, since this junior trainer also synergizes towards my goals later into the run. As I head on to Route 3, I want to talk about one more alternative to this, which is skipping the junior trainer and then just using 2 rare candies prior to Misty, going from 21 to 23. I opted against this because I also want to use my other rare candies more aggressively throughout the mid-game. So my solution here is Swimmer, 1 rare candy before Misty, and then she's fairly easy, although Mimikyu can still lose this fight. Because of that, this is my first save in the playthrough. You might wonder if Bide is viable against Misty, and I think the answer is yes, because Mimikyu has high special. That said, I don't think there's any advantage to using it as a play here, since typically you do that with Pokemon that want to beat Misty before they go to Nugget Bridge. This is so you can get Bubble Beam and then knock out all of the mandatory trainers more quickly. But with Mimikyu's typing, it doesn't make any sense to fight Misty before the rival, so coming back here and just having Swift makes more sense. On the SSN, I'm picking up Rest. Skipping it last time was a mistake. For Surge, I contemplated mimicking Mega Kick and then using it to knock out his Raichu. I had the hope that maybe this would minimize the number of turns that I need to spend in battle. And while it has the possibility to save 1 turn, I could also bleed more turns if Mega Kick is just unlucky. For that reason, I think that the 4 turn with Swift is perfectly acceptable. I need to adjust my vitamins. The protein didn't make any sense. Calcium is so much better, and they're going to be key for a later battle. After finishing Pokemon Tower, I am going to battle Erica next. This is for experience. If I don't fight her now, then one of the optional battles on Cycling Road, the Weezing trainer, his Pokemon have the chance of surviving Psychic, which I just found to be really annoying. I tested the Erica fight, and it turns out I just got really unlucky the last time around. This isn't really that difficult of a battle, but there is a chance that I lose. After testing and optimizing everything and making this decision, of course Mimikyu loses here. I did save this time though. I was not willing to play that risky against her, so I simply take the reset and then defeat her on my second attempt. Inside of Sylph, I am going to pick up the Swords Dance TM. While Mimikyu can't make exceptional use of this move, it is going to be very helpful for one fight. Once again, level 40 for the rival. I get unlucky here losing to the Flareon, which was very frustrating, and so by the time I defeat him, I'm only 51 seconds ahead of my first playthrough, which wasn't the improvement I was hoping for in this section of the run. But a lot of the benefits are still coming up. I still fight Psych on my way to Cinnabar Island, and then inside of Sabrina's gym, I do a different trainer, this Psychic who has 4 Pokemon. This is essential for experience. I'm now partway through level 45, and I'm going to retain Slash for the entire Sabrina battle. While I don't outspeed the Alakazam, once I knock it out, I level up to 46, and then I teach Play Rough in the place of Slash. Blaine had the potential to be difficult last time around, I just got lucky. I'm going to adjust for that by using 5 rare candies prior to this battle, going to level 51. And Blaine ends up being simple, just spamming Psychic. I played around with using Swords Dance for this fight and maybe Double Edge, but the damage ranges didn't really work out. And with Mimikyu's lowish HP stat, it ended up being much more difficult beating him when taking recoil damage. Psychic in this case is more reliable defensively because of the special drops. For Giovanni, I'm going to let go of Sharpen in favor of having access to Mega Drain. With the 2 Calcium I used earlier, I now have a 50% chance to one-shot the Rhydon at level 52, and it's still a 50% at level 53. If I went up to level 55, then I would have an 88% chance of knocking it out, but I didn't think that this was necessary. There is a lot of stuff that can just go right for Mimikyu. I'm outspeeding the Dugtrio, it can do nothing to me, the Persian can't can't do anything. I could critical hit the Nidos, or they could just miss a Thunder, or Giovanni could use a guard spec. And by the time I make it to the Rhydon in this fight, while I don't one-hit, I still have my disguise. The candies before Blaine also give me a higher level before Rival 6, which stabilizes some of the risk during this fight. To ensure that I two-shot the Magneton, I don't want to be using Psychic. Instead, I have taught Mimic in the place of Mega Drain, and then I can steal the Sandslash's Slash, which feels really funny. Mimikyu learns a bunch of these moves earlier in the playthrough, both Mimic and Slash, and then it deletes them but gets them back later on. This is one of those beautiful and unique scenarios that doesn't happen all the time in these solo runs, and is one of the reasons I really enjoy doing these backports. With Slash, this battle is so much easier, and I defeat him on my first attempt, saving a lot of time in comparison with my first run. I'm now 4 minutes and 24 seconds ahead. From here, I don't need any more rare candies, so I'm going to take the small time save and skip the one in Victory Road. I don't need Sharpen for Lorelei, because even though I two-shot the Dugong, this doesn't matter. I one-shot the Cloyster, then I mimic Amnesia, set up, and sweep the remainder of her Pokemon using Thunderbolt. Psychic for this guy, Psychic for Agatha. By the way, I can do a hilarious strategy here, mimicking Substitute from Gengar and then setting it up in front of my disguise. Overall, this fight's pretty safe now. The only downside is still Hypnosis. I can continue leveraging Mimic against Lance. Where there was some downside to getting hit by a Blizzard and frozen from the Dragonite, this isn't a possibility if I simply mimic Ice Beam from the Dragonair. Technically, it could freeze me with Ice Beam as well, but I would rather lose earlier into the fight. I'm able to one-shot the Aerodactyl, which I outspeed by 2 points at this level, and then finish the Dragonite in a single hit. For the champion, I make a major moveset change. Swords Dance in the place of Play Rough. Here's why this strategy works so well. Against the Sandslash, on turn 1 when it's breaking my disguise, I can set up Swords Dance, badge boosting Thunderbolt so that it's more likely to one-shot the Cloyster, even though it's not a guarantee. Then with the double attack boost, I can mimic Earthquake, two-shot the Sandslash with its own move, and one-shot the following Alakazam. Now that I have rest, I can heal up on the Executor. Hopefully it won't use Leech Seed, but even if it does, I should be fine. I can complete my setup here with Swords Dance, which is slightly more turn efficient than the alternative. Plus, it further badge boosts me. Cloyster goes from a 72.9% chance to one-shot with the first turn of Swords Dance, up to a guarantee after the second one. And the third Swords Dance just minimizes turns against the Executor. I was so certain that I was gonna win here, and then I misclick on the Cloyster choosing Earthquake instead of Thunderbolt. As a result, it's able to attack me, luckily not finishing off Mimikyu. I went for Earthquake again, assuming after my critical hit I will do enough damage with a regular hit, but for the second time in a row, I get a critical hit and Cloyster survives. If I had used Thunderbolt and got a crit, I would have one-shot, which is so frustrating. Why didn't I just move the cursor? Anyway, I had to go back and fight the champion again, and I got so unlucky. The Sandslash crits me over and over, causing a total of 4 resets in this battle before I finally make it through his entire team. This is a better result than my first run, but not by the margin that I was hoping for. Mimikyu got a time of 45 minutes and 51 seconds with 6 resets, 0 blackouts at level 60 with a game time of 2 hours and 47 minutes. I was frustrated with this result, so I came back and I tried it one more time. Well, technically 2 more times, because I accidentally used one of my rare candies on Charmander right before fighting Misty, and I had to restart after that. I should mention here that it is possible for me to punch in at any point during these runs and finish segments of them, fixing for bad mistakes like this. I don't technically need to do the entire run again. I could resume from replay, play out the champion battle again, and not make the silly mistake against the Cloyster, and that would save me a bunch of time. However, I don't really like doing things this way for my channel, just because additional playthroughs give me additional insights into these Pokemon, and sometimes replaying the entire run, you can just shave off seconds, getting faster at things like overworlding or selecting your moves. You can see that playing out here once I've defeated Erica. I've saved some time by Rival 4, 24 seconds. This is mostly just inefficiency. And then by the time I beat Erica, I've prevented 1 reset. So I'm now 46 seconds ahead of my second playthrough time. Now, I've said it twice this video, and there's been no proof of it, but Blaine is actually problematic for Mimikyu. You can see it here in this fight. He finally causes a reset in this playthrough, so another reason why the third run was helpful for us. It gives us proof of Blaine's dominance. I also had a reset to Rival 6 because the Magneton paralyzes me. There is no way to work around this. Sometimes you just get unlucky. But then I beat Lance and I realized that I had skipped Swords Dance. Also, I don't have Sharpen anymore, so there's no possibility for setup against the champion. There was a brief moment here that I wanted to restart, but then I thought, You know, Mimikyu is actually pretty good. I think it can just beat the champion without Swords Dance, even though that is the optimal play. Now, while I do lose once to the champion, on my second attempt against him, I have no problems. I 2-shot the Sand Slash, 1-shot the Alakazam because of a critical hit, then take care of the Executor even though it's slow. Earthquake then has to 2-hit the Magneton, but I get lucky with a critical hit here, and then 2-shot the Cloyster with Thunderbolt and 1-shot the Flareon with Earthquake, clocking in with a third playthrough time of 42 minutes and 59 seconds, with 3 resets at level 60. This is 2 minutes and 52 seconds faster than my second run, and skipping Swords Dance, I even got a better game time of 2 hours and 43 minutes. I'm not going to go back and do this one a fourth time. This result is good enough for Mimikyu. Before we rank it in the tier list, let's fight Professor Oak, just to have some fun. For this fight, I did teach Mimikyu Swords Dance, since it should have had this move at the end of the game. Setup here is really easy against the Tauros, which only knows normal type moves. Then I can mimic Stomp from Executor, which can't do any damage to ghost types either. From there, the Arcanine can attack with Ember, the Venusaur can attack with Razor Leaf or Solar Beam. By the way, all of his starters are not going to be good here because I would have super effective damage with Thunderbolt if I had gone for the other two teams. And Thunderbolt is fantastic against the Gyarados. Mimikyu has absolutely no problems against Oak. He is so much worse than the champion. For the tier list, Mimikyu's results today place it in the A tier, behind another backport that I did last year for Halloween, Annihilate. I'm not surprised that this is where it ended up. It's a little bit too slow in the early game to get a sub 40 time easily. I think it's possible, but we have to remember that Pokemon like Espathra or Lugia really easily got these times. Sub 40 was not a challenge for them at all. If you want to see a Pokemon absolutely destroy Pokemon Yellow, I recommend you check out the Espathra video. That thing was such a great backport. That's it for this one. If you support me on Patreon or through YouTube memberships, thank you so much. It means the world to me. Now, if you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you in my next video.